So tonight we're pleased to welcome Chris Jagodzinski to Mass Bay RRE with his program on advancement at Amtrak with Acela and Airo. Back in March of 2021, Chris did a presentation for us on the development of what was then known as Acela 2. After that program, Chris offered to do a follow-up program on the features of the new trains in service, but he wanted to wait until they were actually in service, which at that time we thought would happen within a year. And here we are, 4.5 years later. The next gen Acela has now entered service, and Chris is here with his long-awaited program. Chris is Vice President, Commissioning and Corridor Optimization for Amtrak, quite a title. He handles a number of different areas right now: PTC, coordination of the major project work on the Northeast Corridor, such as the Portal Bridge, East River Tunnels, Connecticut River Bridge, etc. Also testing and training on new equipment, Acela, Airo, obviously, and others, and implementation of new routes. And he says, whatever else seems to need help. With all that on his plate, we're grateful that Chris is able to take some time out to be with us here this evening. So Chris, it's all yours and welcome.
Well, Dave, thank you very much again for the invitation. Mass Bay has always been one of my favorite groups. I actually, as a train master with Amtrak, worked the first fan trip when I was here in 1989 out of Boston. So it's been a great group. So I know we got some other folks on here today who are not members. I would just recommend this is a quality group. If you're thinking about joining a group or not, they always could use your support here. So they are a great group, have a great newsletter. They do great excursions. So just something to think about. It is truly a great group. And Dave, thank you again. So, all right. I think I've been talking to you guys for 10 years now. I did stuff pre-COVID on PTC and cab signals and even up in some restaurant in Malden one time, I think. All right.
Yeah, I think so.
So a long time ago. So we will go ahead and get started. So let me see if I can you see my presentation? So again, thank you once again, for having me here tonight. Happy to talk to everybody about stuff that's going on. So just as a reminder, me won't go forward. There I am, right? So this is me from way back when, my first day on the railroad, quite a long time ago. So some of you may notice, take a quiz at the end if you guys can remember where that picture was taken. My first day on the railroad, 1971, back here. So we're not going to go quite back that far, but I will go back to some stuff that, as Dave said, I talked about earlier. We're going to go back to some of the next gen Acela things that I did talk about a few years ago. Some of this will be a repeat. Some of this folks have never heard this before, so I'm going to repeat some of the information before to kind of bring us up to where we are today and what is going on with the next gen train. So first of all, why do we even have a next gen train? All right. Why is it? All right. So back pre-COVID, we had bought 20 sets back around, in the 1990s, and we launched service in November 2000. And, pre-COVID, we were running 17 out of the 20 train sets, were deployed daily, before the COVID schedule. They're running up to 900 miles a day. We were maxed out, 304 seats. That's all we had, 304 seat maximum capacity. And really, the technology on board was really a late 1990s technology that was there. I mean, frankly, we still needed Windows 98, I think maybe even Windows 95 computers. We still needed to actually plug into these trains to work on the electronic diagnostics. Microsoft is not going to write you some new program to update 40 power cars out there. That's all it was. It's not big business for them. So, so we were sort of stuck, at capacity. We're trying to figure out, what do we do? Do we add more trains? Okay, so we go out and buy some more trains. But then if I bought more trains, then they're going to be different, right? They're going to be different. How do I mix them in with the existing fleet was one of the questions we were asking. And it was like not too easily because it won't be an identical match. Well, maybe can we go out there and get more capacity? Well, you can't go back to Ford and say, listen, go get me 40 more 1998 Tauruses because I need to match them up with these other trains. I mean, Ford is going to say, no, you just can't do it. Okay. They're not going to make it. Plus, once again, if you go back to the top, some of that technology is still old stuff there. We did look at more capacity. We actually did run a test train. For the folks who may have seen this before, here's a 9-car Acela train. All right. This is back in 2011. This is the Del River Bridge. We actually took, on a weekend, we took 2 sets apart and we put a couple extra cars in there and we actually ran a 9-car train. There it is right there. 9, count them up, on the Delaware River. We did brake testing. We tested that thing up to 165 mile an hour. We proved it's possible, but when we went back to Bombardier, who was the manufacturer of it, for them to spool up a line just to get, a bunch more cars. Maybe I want to buy 40 more cars. I mean, it was very uneconomical for us to go ahead and do that, to try and make these trains longer trains. Incidentally, when this Acela train was first built, so the power cars, it's a sort of an overpowered train than what you're used to right now, because we only run 6 cars on it, but with the 2 power cars, but with all the horsepower on there, it was really designed to be up to a 10-car train, and that's what the software is designed for. And we did it. Actually, it wasn't much problem. We took those extra 3 cars out of one of the sets, we combined them together. It actually ran very easily. The software figured it all out. But once again, the cars, really were not an option for us to get there. More frequencies, right? Can we do more frequencies? We really only had limited opportunity with the 17 sets running. I only had 3 more for any overhauls. For some of the railroaders on here, I think we had a turkey the other day, or we had a deer. We had deer. Deer at 160 mile an hour sometimes doesn't go so well. I mean, there's no safety issue, but you got to go back and fix your parts on the train. So we just really didn't have, much opportunity for the 17 sets. So we decided to go out and buy a new fleet, right? And the one thing is that we decided to do, we wanted an off-the-shelf technology from Europe, technology supported by vendors for other passenger operations. The Acela is a one-off, and it's very difficult to get parts. The parts are very dissimilar to anything else that's in the world, the way it was designed by Bombardier. And so we said, we need to do something different with the new stuff and sort of get online with the rest of the world here. And we limited those Windows 98 computers. So, we developed a spec in 2012, 2013. That's 12, 13 years ago now. We put the RFP on the street in 2014 and 26. We awarded the contract to Alstom for a TGV tilting train, or it was a train that's based on the TGV platform. We awarded the contract in August 2016. So without going through the whole history of everything here, I just wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed. But what is the train that we actually bought? So some of the folks know this already, but let's go talk about how this train is made up. We'll talk about some of the particulars that are in the train, and then we'll show you the insides of the train. So it's really a 9-car articulated train, okay? We've got different, we call them PCs and PVs. PC stands for power car. It's not technically a locomotive. It's a power car. We call them power cars. They're semi-permanently coupled to the train. PC1 is on the one end, PC2 is on the other end, right? And then PV, passenger vehicle 1, passenger vehicle 2. We got PV 1 through 9, is the way the train's laid out. So one thing here is you'll see like PV9 down at the bottom of the screen here, business class car. That's actually the quiet car. All right. So like on the old train, car 2 was a quiet car. Now car 9, we put it all the way at the other end of the train, so nobody's walking through it. Like you really don't have much first class traffic walking through it, even on the old train. But we put it at the opposite end of the train. So something's a little bit different, but the car numbers are the same. We still have the reserve seating that you do today. But you can see how it's laid out. First class is in car 1. Car 2's got some coach seats in it, plus a kitchen area. 3, 4, 5 is your business. 6 is your cafe. 7, 8 is regular business class. And then 9 is your quiet car. And there's obviously a PC2 on the other end of it. All right. So 9-car train. But it's really, I'm going to show you a table here in just a minute about some of the differences in here. So you can kind of see the cars are actually shorter. The train is just a few feet longer. Believe it or not, it's only about 20 feet longer than the old train was. But you can see here how they're distributed. First class, 44 seats total, if you count the number of seats, the transfer seats, the wheelchair space, right? It can carry a total of 44 bodies. And when you count it all up at the end, we can carry a total of 386 on board. Okay, so for 20 extra feet, guess what? I go from 304 people to 386 people. So for 20 extra feet on the train with the modern technology, the modern power cars and articulation, we actually get 40% more capacity of seats out of that train for the same slot. Like we don't have a lot of slots in New York right now. As everybody knows, we schedule trains to New York every 120 seconds during the rush hour. We don't have a lot of extra ways. So if I can, for each departure, if I got 40 more seats or 40% more seats on the train, that's a win for us. One of the other things that we had to go through, well, why don't you just make a bigger train? Part of the issue that we had to work through there was our maintenance facilities. All right. So for the folks who have maybe been on our maintenance facilities in Boston or Washington or New York, everything is so very constrained. We don't have a lot of real estate there without spending $1 billion, to go tear out more tracks and everything. So we were able to adapt the 3 Acela maintenance facilities, Boston, New York, Washington, to handle this train. So 40% more capacity for just some new hoses, some new plumbing fittings, and some new split rail changes. And actually, I don't even think we changed the split rails in the building, but to change some of the appliance hookups in those maintenance buildings, we actually got 40% more capacity per departure. So it was really a great way to do it without spending a huge amount of our limited resources that are out there. Okay. This is just a couple technical things here. You can see the fleet size on the very first line at the top. The legacy train, we had 20 of them. We are now buying 28, and I'll talk a little bit about that. There's the length I talked about, the third line down, 665 feet. So we 665 do the math, 25 more feet or so, is what it is. But if you look at the very bottom, I go from 304 to 386, every in the capacity of the train. It is actually the faster train too. If you can see here at the maximum operating speed, the old one was 150-mile-an-hour operation. We actually was designed for 165. We ran it at 150. It's a story for a different time, but 150 is where it is. The new train is designed at 186. Actually, I think we even got something better than that because this train technically could, in certain circumstances, probably do 225. But in the configuration that it's in right now for the U.S. tracks, is really capped at 186. Which is a standard high speed you would see across the country. We have it currently running at 160 in some areas. So any area for the Mass Bay folks, are all up in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, when everybody stands at Mansfield or Kingston waiting for the train to go by. So the speed there was 150, now it's 160. The same thing in Princeton Junction, New Jersey. For all the folks who may go watch the trains at Princeton, we're at 160, in that section of New Jersey also where the catenary supports it. Okay. So here she is, launch day. All right, launch day happens. She's really a beautiful train. That's one of our launch pictures we took with some fireworks up in Boston. All right, and yeah, it's really a fun train to have out there. It's got some great amenities. I think the passengers love it. We're still working through some teething pains with it, but the passengers really do love it. So let's go take a look at some of the stuff that's in there, some stuff that I didn't have before. So first of all, this is one of our pictures inside the business class car. Okay, so Acela has two classes, just like the old train did. It's got business class and first class. So this is one of the the interiors of one of the coach business class cars. So a couple things to take a look at here. First of all, the seats are fixed. Okay, they are actually 50-50. And I don't have a zoomed up picture of it, but the power outlets, I don't know how many times I sat on an aisle, have to reach across, excuse me, can I plug my laptop in? Can I charge my phone up? There's actually at-seat outlets between the two seat cushions here by having the seats fixed. The reading light is actually in the headrest up there. It's a little tough to see, but it's actually up there. And we've got the big wings, like if somebody's sleeping, your head's not falling over like into the aisle there. And they're actually pretty comfortable. I know there's some folks that talk about them. They do not recline. Okay, they are definitely light years ahead of those Midwest seats that everybody sees, out in the Midwest corridor with the venture cars out there. But having ridden many hours in those seats on test trains, I've ridden in the front of the test trains, the back of the test trains, 8 hours, 9 hours. I've been in those seats. I haven't noticed any problem with that. I found them to be, pretty comfortable there. Okay. The other thing about the seat not moving is I don't know how many times people have either been on the Acela or the Amfleet, and then maybe you got your coffee on the table or your laptop on the table, and the person in front of you puts that seat up, especially in the Amfleet. It's very jarring. Your coffee may go tumbling onto you. I mean, they didn't mean to do it, but it happens. Everything is solid here. So that tray table is very solid. The coffee tables are very solid. It really doesn't move, and it's a nice high back seat now too, which also is able to offer some measure of privacy. So if you're working on your computer or laptop, you really sort of have to lean around everything the way this thing is laid out to be able to go peek at somebody's screen to see, what you may be working on there. Okay. So this is in one of the business class cars. This is just a different view of the business class car because we also have some tables in the business class. These are some, and by the way, I'll show you the web link here. It'll come up in a couple slides here. But these are our official photos. We did these on a test run. We had film crews on board. This is actually on an actual train. It's not AI. We actually did this with some people on board with actual conductors. We filmed this, I guess it was back in July or August. I think it was July or early August. I forget the date was we filmed this. But you can see how the layout is, in the tables, and you can reserve a table if you want. We've got, some 2-seat tables. We got some 4-seat tables with all reserved seating. Everybody can pick and choose either on the app or on the web, where exactly they want to go. So that's the inside of the coach class car. couple of other exciting things. We've got the food service car. So one of the new things with the food service car is this concept. We call it the grab and go cooler here. Okay. So you can see, you can go up, and some of these folks may have seen grab and go coolers before. Anybody that's ridden the Superliner trains know we've sort of got those grab and goes on the lower level of the Super 2 lounge cars, which are beautiful cars. If you take one of the great trains of the West out there, you can kind of come up and get your food. It's, it saves a little bit of time for what the attendant, will have to help you with, from behind the counter. Now, one of the things, it's not ready yet, excuse me, and we are working on, we're going to be able to do some self-checkout on the Acela train. So some folks, who may have been to airports, I know once in a while I'm flying around and I go to the airport here in Philadelphia, you can grab your food, you can grab your snacks, whatever it is. You go to a self-checkout, put your credit card in, you check yourself out, and off you go. All right. That's the same concept here. So it's not quite stood up yet. That technology is not quite ready yet, but eventually we're going to be able to do it, which will also, increase the business in the cafe and cut down on some of those long cafe lines, during the peak period. Anything though that is either hot or alcoholic will actually stay behind the counter with the LSA. We're just not going to let sit on the beer out there, obviously, and just leave it there, for the taking. But the other thing too, you see here the menu. They've got a whole different menu on the trains now. The fresh salads, there's other fresh sandwiches. They're freshly made. They're actually pretty good. Haven't had a few of them. For the folks who are listening here, and some of the folks know me, like there's no Amtrak pizza on here. I'm still working on that. I'm going to get that pizza back on the train because I do miss the pizza on the lounge cars. No pizza on the Acela for now, but we'll work on it. See, but the fresh stuff is very good though. Okay, so in the cafe. One of the other food choices there is the Acela. Also, we have brought back the cart service. Okay, so if you are in the business class cars, we have an attendant that's going up and down a bunch of these trains here. You can get at seat, you get alcohol. We've got drinks. You can see some of the fresh, sandwiches here and, fresh items here on top of it. But you don't even have to go to the line in the cafe. They will cruise up and down a train with their cart, and be able to sell it. So it's sort of like an airline style cart as you see it. They're actually, probably made by the same manufacturer, but that's yet another service. We have brought that back onto the trains here, which it's well received. And we had, for some folks may remember, about 15 years ago, we were doing this on the legacy trains, and everybody says, "Well, it's going to cost too much money." We actually proved though that the carts did make money, but then also at the same time, it wasn't like they were just stealing the same business out of the cafe. We actually did an increase of business, and they actually wound up paying for themselves because we were able to generate enough extra revenue on the train. So somebody who didn't want to go back and sometimes with that long cafe line and wait for 15 minutes to get your whatever you're going to get, the business did increase and, has been very well received, on board the train here. So one of the other options we have is back in the first class car, is first class meals. So in a first class car, we actually have meals that's on China. There's Amtrak silverware, Amtrak, dishes and everything else. Heated meals, not microwaved. There's alcoholic beverages are included. It's on the China, but you actually get a first class meal back there in the car, the same way as the legacy train did as well. So let's go look at a couple things here. I'm going to try and see if I can flip over, show a couple videos we have. So this here, if you just even go to Amtrak.com and look at the media center, all this stuff I'm going to show you here, you guys can go look at the pictures yourselves. I just, picked a few key pictures here, that I'll show in the group here. So let me see if I can flip over. All right. Can you see my dark screen now, Dave? Can you see that? Okay. Did it flip? First to Dave over. I don't know. I hope you can see this. Well, I'm going to play the video. Hopefully you guys can see this. If hopefully I'm still on the webinar here. Here we go. Did you guys see all that? Dave, I hope you guys can. I'm going to show you one other one here. Let me see if I
Yes, we
can.
saw it fine.
Yes, okay. I'm going to show you one more here. We get one other, but these are all on our website here. I'm going to flip over this one. And can you see this other one here if I show you the first class interior now?
Yep.
Here we go. This one doesn't have the music on it here, but this is one of our shots. You get it inside of what the first class car looks like. The first class is different than the coach class, business class. It's got two in one. You can see the door here at the end is the door to the power car. So it's really at the end of the train, so there's decreased foot traffic. They've also got the table seats. They've also got, just regular seats. It is a 50-50 seating forward and backwards. Similar seats, but these seats are wider. They're a little bit better than the ones in business class. They're definitely wider. Much more elbow room here, as you go on the railroad. Sometimes there's a two-seat tables, there's four-seat tables, and everything is in here. So all in all, it's very nice. It's been very comfortable. I think it's been well received by the people. It's definitely got a more modern feel to it. The train definitely rides a lot better than the old one is. The old ones, have sort of, been wearing out there, and the suspension is much better. It's a much higher performance train, and it really is a pleasure, frankly, to be on there. Okay, you can see some of the tray tables here. They're going on. I'm not sure if they're going to show the plugs here or not. They may show the plug, maybe not. You just get a sense of, what's inside the train here. So, I'm just going to let this play out and then we'll go back to the presentation here. The tray tables, luggage towers, luggage racks. We've got some automated announcement screens, which are not working yet, but we're going to get them working here. Hopefully, up there's the plugs at the seat. We've got some USB outlets there. We've got some 110 outlets there. You don't have to reach over your seatmate to go find the plugs anymore. It's right there for you guys. That's one of the benefits of having 50-50 seating like this, because the old Acela, if we try to put plugs in the seats, every time you would spin the seats, the wires would eventually snap off. So this is an example of one of the accessible seats here for the wheelchairs, and they can have somebody with them at the other side of the table. There's an example of one of the first class meals right here, on board the train. And there's the restroom. So all the restrooms are nice and big, especially for the accessible wheelchairs. It's a very large restroom. It is definitely not, it's definitely not an Airbus restroom or a Boeing restroom. I will tell you for sure. You got plenty of room, inside those restrooms there. So, uh, there's a website at the, if you even just go to Amtrak.com, you can look at the bottom, find media stuff, and all these videos, a lot of these pictures are all there. It's available publicly for the media if anybody wants to go, and take a look at them on yourselves. There's some other stuff I didn't show you in there, but, feel free to go to the media site, on Amtrak.com, and you can go explore, see what's there. Anyway, so here's what we did. So we did launch on August the 28th. So we launched, we had 5 of the next generation sets that were revenue ready. And, we deployed them on existing Boston, Washington trains. Okay. We wanted them to go the whole way. That's where we're going to get the most revenue. If you remember, 40% higher capacity means 40% more people, means 40% more money, for Amtrak if we get them on there. So our launch trains, I know I'm a train number guy. I know it's not very descriptive here, but 2154 and 20, the train goes up from DC in the morning to Boston. It comes back as train 2173. There's a set also that starts out at Boston on 2153 and it goes back on 2170. So it's essentially, it leaves in the morning between 6 and 7 a.m. and it goes back in the afternoon between 3 and 4 p.m. is what they do. Each set makes a round trip. There's 4 departures a day, and that's what we did at launch. We had 1 trip each way on Saturday, and we also had 2 trips each way on Sundays, when we launched. And it required 2 sets. It only required 2 sets, but we purposely, because this is brand new equipment, we purposely said we need 5 sets to make, we call it 2 starts here. Okay. We had an additional set in Washington, New York, and in Boston, and that did a couple things for us here. One, this is a new train. We can do all the training you want, but training, like for folks who go to classrooms, there's only so much you're going to learn in the classroom. You really need to be out there on the train in the field, to get more exposure to it, to learn the little nuances of it. And so we purposely, kind of slow turn the trains here. So the set that comes into Washington one night wouldn't go out the next day. We'd leave it in there. The maintenance people were sort of getting up to speed, learning their processes, how everything goes through. And it allowed for learning curve for that. And, because some things, like nothing is perfect. No new car is perfect. You go to the dealer, sometimes you got to take it back, right? Or sometimes there's a problem, they got to fix it. So this gave us a little bit more time so we didn't have to cancel any trains, okay? As a matter of fact, I'm trying to think about this here offhand. I don't think we have actually even canceled one train. Now think about it. One time, right in the very first week, we inserted an old train for a new train. That was only one time, but since I don't know how many, I should have probably counted up how many departures we had, but I don't think we scrubbed one mission because we couldn't cough up a train here. We couldn't get one of the trains on the railroad to get running here. Okay. The other thing too, like I said, warranty work and FMI work. FMI stands for Field Modification Instruction. So maybe we find a problem. Well, you know what? This didn't exactly work the way it was designed. We need to modify. So for example, like an example of an FMI mod would be we found an issue where you would have one of the drains in the coffee maker really wouldn't drain as quickly as we wanted it to. So, we didn't want anything to spill. So we actually changed one of the drain lines out, put a bigger hose on it, a bigger nozzle on it so things would drain faster. There's nothing really that the passenger would even see, but there are little things all over the place. The railroad runs on details here. And so, this is some of the stuff that as we work through as a new fleet, it always takes a little while to get things settled into work. And so that's why, we set it up. So we only needed 2 sets, out of the 5 to run on any given day. And it turns out it's a pretty solid plan, that we were able to set up here for that. Okay. So that was how we launched. And this was how the operation launched, back on August the 28th. So, whoops. Let me see here. Okay, here we go. Next page. Then just a couple weeks ago, we picked up another set in the fleet. And so what we did is we added another round trip. So we actually added, you see, the black was what was originally there. The green is a new one. So now we have the 6 a.m. out of Washington. I think it's the 2 p.m., right? 2:15 p.m. or so out of New York or out of Boston to go back. We actually added a round trip, which actually saved one of the old legacy sets, and using the legacy set we redeployed it to work on a New York to Washington round trip, 2104. So it's an 8 a.m. train out of Washington and a 12 p.m. train out of New York. We're actually able to do that and begin increasing the frequencies right now. And so this is where we are today. We're looking to possibly add, some additional equipment in December. We're going through the details of that right now. So we'll probably come out, hopefully over the next week or so, we'll have some decisions made. We're going to see where we're going to put it. But, all through most of next year, we are going to keep bringing all these sets online until we get back to at least pre-COVID levels. And we're going to talk about maintenance facilities on a couple slides down when we get to the Aero, but, we plan on getting up to running, hopefully, over the next year or so. We're going to be running 24 out of those 28 trains, between our 3 maintenance facilities, Washington, New York, and Boston. We'll have 24 of those 28 trains running. And the legacy sets, they are coming out of service. We call them COT&S, so that's the air brake inspection. It's a term for air brake inspection dates. And, they are begun to be stored. Out of the 20 sets, 4 of them were sort of stored during COVID, and they got parted out because, once again, not a lot of material. Many of the suppliers from the original train have gone bankrupt. They're out of business. Parts are just not available. So unfortunately, we would love to have all 20 of them running the whole time, but we were just forced to kind of take parts off them because they were just not commercially available anymore. Okay. The production lines have long been shut down. And, we are now down to 4 of them came out of COVID. 2 more of them have had air brake inspections expire within the last few months here. There'll be another one in December. So you're going to slowly start to see them coming out of service. So get your pictures now. Everybody says, I should have taken a picture of that. Go out and get your pictures now because, maybe over another year or so, they may not be around. Okay. They may not be around. So let's switch gears then. So that's Acela, and I'll be able to answer questions at the end, as always here. Let's go talk about the Aero train and what's going on with the Aero train. All right, this is something new. It's not in service yet, but this will be the first foray into a description of what are we doing here. So the Aero program is really going to be replacing a portion of our aging fleet. The Amfleet ones, there are 490 or so Amfleet ones. They are great cars. Right, they're very good cars. They provided many years of service. They are in some cases, over 50 years old. Okay, so think about it. The first Amfleet cars were really introduced in 1974. Right, 50 years ago now. Can't believe it's that long. Right, think about this. Right, and I know you folks have heard me say this analogy before. Think about if you had a 1974 Chevy Impala. Okay, take that car, 74 Chevy Impala, and you drove that car at 125 mile an hour 9 hours out of the day, up and down I-95. Where do you think that Impala would be, right? It wouldn't be anywhere remotely close to, being in service anymore. That thing would be so beat up. But yet we keep these cars running. The Bud Company did a great job building these cars. But like anything is finite. Metal has a finite life to it, and everything is still safe. Everything is still running. But it's really, they have done yeoman service out there, and we are going to be looking to replace them. Okay. So the Aero program will be replacing the Fleet 1. The Talgos out west, as folks may know, the Series 5 Talgos are now all gone. We've got the other two series, Jesus, the 7 or 8, I think it's the 7 series. They're still out there. But the Aeros going to the Pacific Northwest will replace them, as well as, their Horizon cars and a smattering of other things here. The other thing the Aero program is going to do once it retires those cars is we're going to move from a single car concept to a train set concept. Really, it does a number of different things between safety, reliability, customer satisfaction. I'll get to a slide about that in a minute. But we're going train sets. Everybody's going to say, "Oh, I don't like train sets." Train sets aren't bad as long as you have the facility to properly maintain them. So if you think about like Amtrak ran the old, this may not be an example. I know some folks on here remember the UA turbos from the 1970s that ran from Boston to New York. They used to be deadheaded down to Indian Point every day in Providence, right? But they did okay, right? And for many years, Amtrak ran the RTGs in the Midwest. We ran the RTL turbos in Albany for quite a number of years, and we did that. And we've now got 25 years of Acela, okay? Only really, we did have a problem with the Acela one time. We had a problem with one of the trains, and we got around it okay, and we kept running. And train sets are not bad as long as you have the right maintenance facilities to do that. And I will talk about what we're doing about maintenance facilities here in a couple slides. So anyway, the Aero program really started, we knew we had to replace this stuff. We got some programming money from the FRA back in 2021, and then along came the IIJA Act, was signed later on that year. And there's a lot of money in there, $66 billion for any number of different things: passenger rail, freight rail, commuter agencies, Amtrak, not only Amtrak. 22 billion of it was actually dedicated to Amtrak. And because we are replacing the Amfleet assets and replacing some diesels and P42s and a whole bunch of other things, the Aero program became eligible for the funding. So we were able to get a lot of stuff funded, because of, that act that was passed. And, finally, we're actually going to get some more modern stuff out here and get rid of the 50-year-old trains. Okay. So a couple things. Why train sets? Okay. First thing is some of the train sets, and I'll talk about it in a minute, they're all going to be, not all of them, but all the stuff in Northeast Corridor, they're all going to be dual mode train sets. It'll be able to run on electricity. It will also be able to run on diesel. No more in-route engine changes. So every time I can remember for years, like, when I started with the Amtrak, we were not electrified going up to Boston, right? We would pull in, like 170 would pull in, the motor, the AM7 would cut off. We'd pack the first diesel on top of the train and then cut the head two cars off, and that would become train 470. And that went to Springfield, right? And, all the Boston people are still sitting here. Then 10 minutes later, the second diesel backs on, picks up the rear 7 or 8 cars, and that became 170, went to Boston. You were sitting in New Haven for like 20 minutes, and then the diesels are slower. We eliminate all that. The same thing with these regional trains now. You get a motor that's going to tow you from Boston to Washington, right? We cut off at Washington. You're there for 25 minutes, even 30 minutes in a bunch of cases. As you take the ACS off, you put the P42 on. Now you go to Richmond or Norfolk or Roanoke, all these places. No more, okay? You'll be able to pull in, drop the pantograph, and go. The same thing for the Pennsylvania train, right? All the engine changes, the Pennsylvania sits at 30th Street for a half an hour. We should be able to come in, get out in under 10 minutes while we unload, reload everybody, and off you go. Not only that, but managing this thing as a train set actually cuts down on all the switching. We're not cutting like car 2 out for maintenance and putting another car in because that one's due. They have different maintenance times are due. Everything is managed as a set, okay? It just makes everything quicker. It standardized the concept. We're not pulling cables out. Think about this. What if you're at home, right? And you've got an extension cord. You're plugging it into your wall. You take it in, you plug it out several times a day. In, out, right? Eventually, your cords, your cables wear out. Things become less reliable. We don't have to do that anymore. All these connections, like we have problems right now with PA systems on the Amfleet or door controls because you get some water or dirt gets in the cable or the cable just wears out. All that goes away. Everything is managed as a train set, from a maintenance base, And not only that, and we'll talk about the facilities, I promise, in a second here, show you what we're doing. Like even the Acela, though, it comes into the facility. You can change out a wheel from underneath the train while the coach cleaners are working. I don't have to cut a car out to do anything else with it. If the air conditioner goes bad, I have a crane that's on their ceiling, or it's on the roof of the maintenance facility. I can lift off the AC unit, put it on the floor, put a new AC unit on it. I send the train right out the door in my regular service time. And meanwhile, I'll take that air conditioning unit and I'll go work on it on a bench somewhere off, so I don't have to have the whole train shopped out. I get the train back on the road, where it's making money. So train sets do work as long as you have, the right maintenance facility to be able to go, maintain this stuff. Okay. So, number of things on board. There's some extra lifts, increased accessible spaces, bigger seats, better seats. And I'll show you some pictures here of what it looks like in a minute. Cafe, car amenities, wide Wi-Fi. We actually have some new Wi-Fi. Believe it or not, Amtrak's Wi-Fi provider, believe it or not, is actually McLaren. Like, yeah, it's the same one that does the race cars. I think they got their start, with all their high-speed communications between, the pit crew and the race cars and stuff. But that's actually who's on the Acela, and that's actually who's going to be doing, this on the Aero train as well. So inside, let's go take a look inside. Here's the business class car, right? So this is the very first set that we have. Many folks have seen it. I think I was on YouTube a bunch of times. We brought it across the country here. But this is a business class car, 2-in-1 seating. This will be at the one end of the train. And this car, though, the colors on this train, inside and outside, are themed for the Cascade service in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, and I'll talk about what's going out there in a minute. The trains for the Northeast will have a different, it's going to have the same seats and the same cars and equipment. It's just the color pattern, the theme is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be more red, white, and blue here versus the Northwest. They've got their own branding, which they've had for many years, a very successful brand out there. And we're continuing to support the state of Washington, with, what's unique about that service out there. So, business class seat here on the Aero train. Here's another piece of a business class seat within the Aero train here. You can see you've also got the table seats. As is the Acela, the seats are fixed. All right, they're 50-50 fixed seating. The frame of the seat doesn't move for all those other reasons that I mentioned earlier about the Acela train. This one's a little bit different though. So on the Acela train, where the cushion sort of slides out when you want to recline, the back on this one actually moves within the frame of the seat as well. So the back comes out, gives you a lot more lumbar support. It's a very comfortable cushion. I will report back, Dave, if I'm invited back again on my hours of test train riding here. Once we're riding these things, I'll let you know if it's the same thing. But so far, it's been very comfortable with a high headrest and the cushions and everything. This is once again the business class. All right, coach class, similar to the Acela. Instead of 1 and 2, like in the business class, is 2 and 2 seating. All right, all fixed again, still firm, robust seats. You can see actually even the handhelds. One of the unique features is the handheld in the seats here. As you're walking through the train, you can balance yourself. So you're not grabbing on the seat back or shaking from some pads. If you want to hang on, when you're walking through the train here. So there's a lot of similarities I think folks have seen in the layout. But also the windows much bigger, much wider than the Amfleet windows. It's much easier to see out of these windows. I think the folks really do like those big windows on the Acela trains, and this is going to be a great improvement, over those Amfleets. When the Amfleets were made, they're made in 1970s. That's when everybody was shattering windows with rocks and everything, and they all went to very small windows. We're good. These windows are very robust. The technology has improved also, but I think it's going to be a real big hit, for a lot of our passengers out there. Cafe car. All right, little cafe. This one, once again, is themed the Pacific Northwest. You can see there's actually, you don't see that grab and go coolers to the right shoulder of the photographer here, but you see the cafe counter here. In the cafe cars in the middle of the train. So it's a little bit more modern. Ultimately, we're looking to have some grab and go stuff as well. We're not going to be set up for that on launch, but we're working through those details now. One of the other features, what we want to do in the future too, and the cafe is built for it. You can't see it in this picture here, but around the corner is you can, we want to be able to have you make your order online, right? Go online and order it, and then it'll be ready, and then they can page you on the PA system. There's actually, there's a glass case to the left there on the other side of it. I don't have a picture of it, I'm sorry. But it's an area where you can get your to-go order. It'll be there. You just go and pick it up. You don't have to wait in line, okay? The Down Easter service, for folks who haven't ridden Down Easter, they actually offer that service today where you can scan a QR code, you make your order, then the cafe car attendant will tell you when you go and pick it up, even on today's Down Easter service. So we're looking to, how can we expand that, for the future on the air train. So I think that's going to be great because who wants to go up and stand in line? If we can do that, that's actually more revenue for us. We spread our fixed costs out, by increasing the amount of revenue we bring in on food service here. Check baggage. So some of the trains, and I'll show you a description overall of the trains here, have some baggage areas in them. So in the Cascades, they offer some check baggage service and also bicycle service. You can see the bicycle racks there. All right. I'm a big fan. Take my bike on Amtrak. I've done it. $20. You hang your bike up there. You don't have to put it in the box and you can sort of walk it on there. But this is in some of the cab cars will have baggage service just like on the Cascades. For example, Carolinian will go with one of these sets with baggage service. The Palmetto will. The Pennsylvania's got baggage service. So some of the sets will be fitted with we call them B1B sets for baggage. Not all the sets of baggage though. You still want to have checked baggage on the main line Northeast regional trains that go from Boston to DC or from Boston to DC to Virginia. They are still not offering checked baggage service, and you'll find just a bunch more seats, in this cab car here. So speaking of which, it's a train set, right? Locomotive at the one end, the cab car is at the other end of the train. So this is actually an inside shot of what the cab car looks like. It's actually, for some of the folks who either see the stuff on the Springfield line or the Keystones, you're shoved in that little broom closet. It's very uncomfortable for the engineer. It's not great climate control in there. It's, based on that 1967 Metroliner. This is so much better. Okay, it's really set up. The controls are almost just like either an ACS 64, an ALC, or an SC 44 diesel, and it's a much better environment to be a locomotive engineer in. With everything together, and you can walk through, from the rest of the train, to get into the cab car here. But this is just it's a full size cab, especially if there's a second person over there is qualifying, or the conductor's got to be up there for any reason to copy any mandatory directive. It's just so much better. It's so much. I just can't tell you how much better this is than what our engineers have to go through today. With the cab car. So let's talk about the three different type of sets we have here. We've got B sets, C sets, and D sets. Now, no idea. Don't even bother asking me. I don't know what happened to the A sets. I have no idea. So don't ask. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll figure it out. But B, C's, and D's. So let's start at the bottom. D sets. D is easy for diesel. Okay. So on the Cascade service, they are getting diesel sets. There'll be a 6-car train set plus either an ALC 42E locomotive, and I'll explain what an ALC 42E is in just a second, or in some cases, in the Northwest, they have already bought a number of years ago. They've got 8, we call them SC 44s. They are state charges like the 1401 through the 1408 or 1400 through the 1408, right? I think are the numbers. We actually even have the 1403s in Philadelphia today. We were doing some testing. Some folks have probably seen it come across country. So the Cascade sets will either have a couple extra ALC 42Es we bought, or they'll run with the SC 44s out in Seattle. They are D sets, diesel only. There's no catenary. There's no third rail out there. They're just straight diesels. Seattle is the only place that's going to get the D sets. Okay. So let's go to the B sets. And then there's a couple different kind of B sets here. B sets are going to be what's most interesting. They're going to be the largest part of the fleet here. So ALC 42E, a diesel engine, but the E stands for electric. So it's a diesel, but it's also electric. So if you look, the APV car is right behind the diesel, auxiliary power vehicle car. Okay. That car's got a pantograph on top, 2 pantographs actually on top of it. All right. And in the belly of the car, between the trucks down there, there's a main transformer. So when that train's operating the Northeast corridor, the pantograph on the APV car is going to be raised up into the air. It's going to have the transformer supply voltage, and without getting into too many details about the engine, but it's actually going to supply electric power into the engine on a thing called a DC link, actually, and which will run all the traction motors on an engine. All right. And the beauty of by doing it this way, we just spread out the weight. For some folks who may have seen maybe the Alp 45s, which run on Jersey Transit, I personally been in that machine room, and it's like being in a submarine. I think I can't even stand up. I'd be hunched over the whole time trying to work in there. It's just a massive machinery, and it's a very very heavy engine, which does beat up the track. Okay. The beauty of how we're doing it this way is we're able to spread some of the weight out across the 2 cars. So the heavy transformers back here in the APV, the pantographs back there. And so now I get a diesel, I can run the diesel, or I can run electric. And not only that, when I run it electric, believe it or not, those 2 trucks you see on that APV car actually will uh, actually will provide power. They actually have traction motors in those trucks. So you're going to get 4-power trucks when you're in electric mode. The diesel, you really don't need it because the diesel is fixed horsepower. You're limited to the 4,200 horsepower that's on there. It goes a little slower. So only the front 2 trucks on a diesel will actually turn, when it's running there. But it actually turns into dual mode train set. So let's say you're running the train, going down the railroad from Boston to Washington, and that train is now going to go to Roanoke, Virginia. When you get to Washington, you're going to turn on the diesel. The engineer hits a button, the diesel starts up. You'll drop the pantograph. You transition to diesel mode. The train's ready to go. No more cutting cables. No more yard crews. No more, waiting for 25 minutes for the people to go through. I mean, for a through passenger, like who wants to sit there, especially in the dark or no air conditioning, no lights. The same thing in New Haven, up north, the same thing. We don't want to be changing the stuff. So the APV, you can make this transition here within a matter of a minute or two. It's going to take longer to load the passengers than it is to change modes here. Okay. So all of the B sets are going to be dual powered. And I'm going to show you a couple different kind of B sets in just a minute on the slide here. The last set here is going to be the C set, right? It's going to be a hybrid set. And we are going to be experimenting with the battery car. And that's going to be meant for the Empire service right now. So battery technology is new, and what we're going to do is we are going to work on the technology, and do some testing with it, and then we'll make a decision and say, hey, is this really working out like we wanted to? Is it not working out? And then we'll see, but we should be taking our first battery delivery probably, I think, is sometime in 2028 when it shows up for the testing, and we're going to put it through this thing and see if it's worth it or not, or do we have to turn the train into something different? Okay. But the battery service is meant to be on Empire service as it comes out. The battery technology is not what it was 10 years ago. It is light years ahead of where it is. There's lots of things going on now. So, we're taking a look at it to see, will this work for what we need to do? Okay. Especially in the tunnels in New York there. So, overview. All right. It's a very busy slide here. So we'll start at the top here. So we've got a couple of the B sets. The first 3 lines of the B sets, we got B1As, B1Bs, B1Cs. So a B1A and a B1B set, right? They're the 6-car set. So the difference is like a 6-car set. The B1A, you're going to see that up on, let's say, Downeaster service, right? You're going to see that in Keystone service, right? There will be dual modes and they'll be able to swap out. So the Downeaster set, maybe in Downeaster one day, maybe it'll go into a different service another day, okay? The B1B is a little bit different. If you can see, it's got some less seats, but it actually has baggage space in it. Okay, there's actually some baggage space. If you look at the B1A at the top, you see 52 seats in that cab car. In the B1B, B is for baggage, you only see 34 seats because there is a baggage area. And you may see that, like, for example, on the Pennsylvanian train or the Carolinian or some other train, Palmetto or something, where we actually offer checked baggage service on those trains. Third line down is the B2. Those are the 8-car trains, okay? Those are the mainline trains, which you will see. Those are going to be on your regional trains that go Boston to New York, to Washington, to Virginia, all the big, all those big 8-car trains. That's what it'll represent. You can see how many seats are in there, for those. C is a 6-car train, so it's really this almost similar to the B1A. It's just got a different source of power on it, though. And if you look at the count, the passenger count, it's really the same, except it's got a battery versus the pantograph. Like I said, we're going to be checking that out. And then lastly, at the very bottom, D is for diesel. It's cascades only. You can see how they're set up. And all the trains universally set up the same way. Locomotives at one end. Next to the locomotive is the business class. In some cases, in the Cascade, the business class is not an APV. And the rest of the trains, it is an APV, whether it's a battery powered or AC powered, is in the business class. After that comes the food car, and then you've got a variety of coaches, before you get to the cab car at the other end of the train. So very busy. B is for, B is the dual modes, C is the battery, and D is for diesel. All right. So this is sort of the total. Right now, we've got 83 sets are on order. Okay. And this is the summary here. What they are. The D sets are coming out first. We expect to see that that's the one that you see in Philadelphia. Here's one of the D sets. We'll probably have another one coming east here. Probably, let me see, what's today? Might be December, might be January. We're gonna have to see exactly what the date is, but probably within the next 8 weeks, there'll be a second D set, which will be located here in Philadelphia. All right. The B2s, the regional sets, really just all the mainline regional trains. The B1s, between the A's and the B1A's, B1B's, depending on where checked baggage service is going to operate on all of those other state-supported services, here in the East, excluding the Empire. Then the Empire gets the C trains, so it's Empire service, the Ethan Allen train that goes to Burlington, the Maple Leaf to Toronto, the Adirondack, which goes up to Montreal there. So, what are we doing with those sets right now? Qualification testing. So, one train of each type will be out in Pueblo, Colorado at the test track. This is a picture of the D set here, back in October, right before. This is actually the day it came east. This is us leaving the facility here out in Pueblo. You can see the Rocky Mountains. What you can't see there is about 1 million prairie dogs all running around there. There's prairie dogs there, foxes there. I have yet to, there's a warning to look for rattlesnakes there. I've yet to see a rattlesnake out there, but I'll tell you what, the prairie dogs are everywhere. All right. But anyway, so the D train went out there first. We did multiple things out there. The B and C trains, one B train and one C train will go out there. Not every train goes out there, one of each type. And we like to test out here first just to get some of the infancy stuff done out of the way, because I don't want to be on the NEC. I can't be in the middle, like jamming up some Acela train, taking up track time with the Acelas and all the commuter trains out there and getting in Jersey Transit's way or MBTA's way, or going out there pestering the freight railroad. So this is a nice area to make sure we build the reliability in the train, test a lot of the basic stuff in a test environment where I'm not in anybody else's way. And then once it's there, then we bring it to the Northeast corridor. But, so some of the things here, brake performance, noise and vibration, horn, bell, the event recorder, just a lot of the basic stuff, goes on here. VTI, vehicle track interaction testing. That will be for the B and the C sets only with that APV car. There's a little bit different configuration, some different weights on the train. So that will actually get some of the VTI testing done there in Pueblo as well as the Northeast corridor. Okay. So after that, then the trains come to the Northeast corridor. So here's a picture of our D set, sitting downstairs in Penn Coach Yard. Penn Coach Yard is our testing base. All right. So we've got some real estate here. We've got a lot of other support, mechanical support, transportation support, the test crew. I'm there. We've got some great test crews. Probably some of you guys are on there today, our testing and training crews. Everybody, thank you for the job you're doing. You guys have done a great job with the Acela, and I know we're going to do a great job with this. So if you're listening, thank you. But we base this out of here. And so really, like everybody says, geez, that's a long, why would I bring the train from California to bring it to Philadelphia only to bring it back to Seattle? All right. It seems like it's a lot of deadhead, but we can control so many more things here. Once again, I don't want to have to deal with Union Pacific. I don't want to have to deal with BNSF. And out of the 83 sets we bought, 8 of them are this. That's only 8. So, 8 out of 83 is not a large percentage. It's easier for me to bring this stuff here so I can control it all. And then when it goes out there, I know it's a product that's ready to go. There's just a few little things we'll have to do when it gets to Seattle. You have to do a few more tests, just on that very specific route. But really, it's really a much better way to test everything here with all the resources here. And digital technology. The DT people are here. The Wi-Fi will get installed here. That's where everybody's based. And it's just cheaper and easier for me to deadhead the train around than it is to, send like 100 different people out there to try and go to Seattle, for testing. Facilities. All right, we're getting to the end of this here. The facilities. So we are making modifications in a number of different facilities. So 6 facilities, we call them our level 1 sites. So they are, Sunnyside up in New York, Ivy City in Washington, D.C., Southampton Street Yard in Massachusetts, Penn Coach Yard in Philadelphia, Rensselaer, Albany Rensselaer, and then Seattle, okay? And those sets are going to be set up to handle a lot of the big stuff. Air conditioners lifting off at the top, wheels from underneath the bottom. How do we chew the wheels? How do we change out that big equipment to do the maintenance? And these 6 facilities really are there are a lot of things are under construction right now to really, provide a train set maintenance. Like I said, train sets work, but just to get the maintenance facilities in service and working is going to be great. Level 2 facilities, those are a lot of the other outlying facilities that I know facility may be a stretch of a word, but we're putting additional investment in there so we can service the trains better, whether it's for plumbing systems, toilet systems, air brakes, things that we can work on there. All these other level 2 facilities that, we are working on where these trains do, lay over, we're making improvements to those facilities as well. Okay. The level 2 sites really servicing and cleaning tracks. And in some cases, like even on some of the SCE tracks, we've actually got some fuel pads and some other stuff that we can, because remember, even if they're running electric, they may run diesel for part of the trip. So we also need to have additional fuel pads at some of these locations, so we can fuel these locations. We want to pull the train in, lock it up in the track. The cleaners can do the thing. The air conditioning people can do their thing. The electricians can do their thing. The fuelers, the laborers who have to fuel the engines, put sand in the engines, things like that, they can all do it. I don't have to cut the engine off, take the engine over to the pit. It's just wasted time. You're busting up those electric connections. You're trying to marry them up again. So much more efficient. It's just really, we're turning everything into a one-stop shop here. So here's actually a site of this. I thought this was a good picture. I was out in Seattle back in September. How do you know it's Seattle? Take a look at the BNSF train going by. There's a whole bunch of 737 fuselages on their way over to Renton, where they come from Kansas City, and they go to Renton where they get assembled into 747s. But so you know it's Seattle because they're on their way to the factory to be made into airplanes. All right. I personally prefer my airplanes with wings, but there you go. So you can see the level of construction that's going to be in here. This is going to be great because Seattle's facility has really been such just like nothing but an outdoor gas station. They really haven't had a lot of places to work, but really you can see the level of the construction here, which you don't see. So when I took this picture on one day, there's like nothing there, but like when I was leaving the day that I left, the next day I left, there's a whole bunch of steel columns and steel roof already going up on the right-hand side over there, which is crazy. And by the way, little trivia, no extra charge for this, Dave. This is outside the scope of this program. But if folks know, how did Boeing figure out how wide a 737 is? The answer is it was wide enough so it can clear on the freight train when it goes through the Cascade Tunnel out there in Pacific Northwest. Okay. It clears, they go through the Cascade Tunnel, and that's how come 737s are as wide as they are, believe it or not. All right. So let's see here. So our rollout schedule for the Arrows 2026 is really when you're going to see it launched in Cascades. We're testing in Philly for now. Sometime in the first quarter next year, the first set will go out to Seattle. We're going to do a bunch of work there. Get that done to get that service launched. We're hopefully get some stuff launched in, hopefully sometime around the summertime. And then, by fall, it's actually going to go pretty quickly. Those Talgo trains and all those ampletes out there, we're going to bring those ampletes back east, and everything could be potentially rolled out by this time next year. They could all be rolled out. It's possible. All right. 2027 will be the introduction of the B2 sets on regional service. We're going to be getting the first 8-car B train out of Siemens at some point in time in 2026. Once again, we'll take it to the test center. It'll go out to the test center for 2 months. Then we've got a few months of Amtrak testing on the Northeast Corridor as a regional train. You'll see that going between Washington, Boston, Virginia. You'll see that train go to a whole bunch of places in this Northeast Corridor, probably in late 2026, for some type of service launch in 2027. A lot of the other B trains, the B1 sets show up, by 2029, you'll start to see some of these other services come online. And then 2030, the Empire trains are going to be the last, with their battery stuff. After we get the testing done on that, it's going to take a little bit more time, and they will be launched sometime around 2030. So really there's a lot of trains. There's hundreds of cars, 83 train sets, and do the math. I think it's probably one of the largest car orders that has ever been put out there, by a railroad to a manufacturer, over 600 cars, maybe except for maybe a New York City subway car order. But they will, it's just going to take a while to get through it. So we're probably in a 6 years, progress over the next 6 years as these things roll out to the different routes. So, Dave, I think it's going to be time for questions. That's the end. Dave, we can't hear you.
Yep. We always screw something up.
All right.
Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of questions here,
Bring it
and
on.
I'm just going to go through them more or less in the order they came in. First question. Why do I have feedback? Anyway.
I don't hear the feedback.
Yeah, okay, must just be me. Is that a Penn Central logo on your sweater?
It is. There I am, Penn Central. Yes. I was trying to figure out what to wear tonight because I knew somebody's going to call me out for it. But yeah, so it's Penn Central. One of my favorites, right? I'm not as old as some others, and I'm not as young as some others, but I remember growing up with Penn Central trains, around the neighborhood. That picture, oh, by the way, so we'll see if anybody figured out where that picture was, but yeah, that was on the Reading Railroad. I grew up, around them.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so going through these questions here, says, I like the route displays. Do the route displays update with the train's position?
The route displays, yes, they will. Yes, they will. So right now, so let's take, for example, I'm assuming we're talking about the displays in the Acela train that we saw. I showed it in one of the pictures at
Yes,
the top.
yes.
Yes. Yeah, so it's a combination of GPS based and wheel tack based. We're having problems making it work very consistently, but for the folks who've been out there in the test trains, it worked great. Now leaving Back Bay. Next stop is Route 128. Now arriving Route 128. Welcome, it worked great, and it makes automated announcements, and it makes updated screens, and that's ultimately where we want to get to. We don't want to put it out there until it's 100%. Like, some of the stuff is like a lot of it's like 95%, but until it's 100%, because we don't want to have anything glitch up and then have people miss their stops or whatever. So, we'll have more on that soon. The Aero stuff will have the same functionality, as well in those overhead screens. It's not only visual, but it's also audio because it also we wanted to comply with ADA, requirements, for passengers who have, some type of disability.
Okay, moving on the Boston to New York route, are the single first class seats on the ocean side or the land side?
Good question. Let me think about that. They are all going to be, wait, let me check here. I'm going to say they're all on the ocean side. I just want to make sure that train's not split, but I think it was. Hang on. Let me go back and look. I did. I'm going to say they're on the ocean side. I'm going to try and find that video again here, see if I can find it. But yeah, I'm going to say ocean side. Yeah, because the car, it's a straight out on the car, so it's all on the ocean side.
Okay.
Yep, I'm looking at it. There's the picture, Oceanside. Yeah. Now I say this, if the train's in its normal configuration, so when the first class car is usually always at the Washington, D.C. end of the train, okay, and the quiet car will be at the Boston end of the train. So occasionally, like for example, we had an issue with 2173, which is a 4 o'clock departure out of New York today, or out of Boston today. That was on the ocean side going up, but it's going to be on the land side going back, just because it's uh, there was a problem with it today. So instead of canceling the train, we will put the seats on the other side.
Okay, so there's a few questions that are kind of all related.
Yep.
Um, and so the question a couple people have asked, what's going to happen with the older Acela trains? And sort of a parallel question, have any of the legacy Acela trains been promised to museums?
Um, a couple things. For the old Acela train, they could be available for disposal. We're not going to have much use for them because they are it takes so much investment to get all the electronics and stuff up to speed. I mean, the car shells probably got some life in them, but it's going to take us so much money, and we need to do something different. We're not going to use them, so they are available. They'll probably be put up for bid for folks who may want them, whether you're a railroad or not. Extension cord not included. All right.
Sell
Uh,
them on eBay.
eBay, maybe on eBay, we could do that. I don't know. We may be selling parts for them. Some of them. Well, I got one person that's on our mechanical team who's a huge scuba diver. He wants to turn them into a big reef and go diving in them out somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. So they will be disposed of. Okay, they're really not going to stick around the Amtrak fleet. Remember, they don't have traps. They only can be used on a high level platform. Museums have started talking to us, but there's no commitments been made. We don't have any official request, and we got to figure out what to do. Like some museum, probably I don't think there's any museum around here that can take 700 feet of a solid train. So what does that actually look like? Like even folks who remember the Aero train when that thing was around back in the 50s. Like if you go up to the Green Bay Museum in Wisconsin, there's a power car, there's like two coaches, and that's it. Like, out of that 9 car train, there's only 3 units left of it, and they sort of adapted it for their museum. So
Same with the
it's
old Roger
possible.
Williams set.
Yeah, the exactly. Yeah, yeah. So if anybody's interested in a museum, I would suggest they would write a letter to Amtrak, to our public affairs or our corporate affairs. I'm trying to steer them all in that direction so they can evaluate what Amtrak can do. Amtrak just can't give stuff away. We got certain federal rules we have to follow. But yeah. All right.
Okay, next one, there's a whole bunch of questions here from the same person.
Okay.
So, question I think a lot of us have asked is why is it that the vertical sides of the power cars don't align with the um, angled sides of the passenger cars? The
So
observation is that it totally breaks the flow of the train's exterior.
I know everybody notices that, so I guess the best way to describe it, right, is when the contract was let in 2016, right, there was one kind of car that was available. Now, what happened subsequent to them making the train, a newer and better power car became available. So the power car you see here is actually a very new technology, which is only just beginning to get introduced in Europe. Okay, it's called a TGVM technology, and it's a TGVM power car, and it's really designed to be with something different than what it was. And so, yeah, they sort of put it together to get the best product. I can't explain it all. That's the best story I got at it. It was actually two technologies that blended together, but they didn't want to go back and redesign everything. I know, guys. I know that. All right.
And I understand that the TGVM has had its teething problems as well.
I haven't been over there yet to see it. I want to get over and see how it compares with this. We had that X2000 here 30 years ago. I remember riding it, and I'm like, this is great. I remember going back to Sweden. I went to Sweden to ride that X2000 in 2010 to go see it, and oh my God, it was such a nice train. Because but they had it all worked out, and I want to go back over to see how they're doing with this technology too over there. So when it gets back there.
I think there's also some double deck versions of the coaches that use the same power car.
Yeah, there is, and so that's one of the other things, by the way. So everybody says, "Well, why don't you just go double deck, right? Go double deck." Well, I don't know if anybody here has ever ridden in one of the NJT multi levels, which are very nice cars for commuters, okay? But our passengers are not, with some exceptions, we have some commuters, but our passengers bring a lot of luggage on board the trains, okay? And what happens is, like anybody who's ridden, like my laptop bag that I have, if I ride an NJT train, if I go to Newark Airport or somewhere in NJT, I can't even fit it into the overhead rack. You can fit a briefcase into the overhead rack. There's very few bags to fit over there. And so what we have discovered here, at least in the U.S. for our industrial design team, the uh, it was like you're going to wind up with the same number of seats anyway because we have to take so many seats out to put the luggage towers in. You're going to wind up with the same number of seats. So why go through all the ups and downs on the stairs? You just make it one single level train. You wind up with the same stuff, frankly.
Okay. Um, and the next question is why do these cars have the outdated and almost totally replaced USB-A connections instead of the universally accepted USB-C to USB-C?
Because when the contract was let in 2016, that's what they came with. They are in the process. It could not be. We didn't want to hold up the launch. Okay. We didn't want to hold up the launch, but there's already a design and a contract in place with Alstom to replace them, to upgrade them to the most modern USB stuff. Okay. It just wasn't available when we signed the contract. And just by the time we got around to it, unfortunately, yeah, we didn't want to hold up the launch. We think it's more important to launch than it was to get it right. Now, the Arrows are already updated with the other because they're much newer cars. 2020, they're number of years younger. The Arrows already have the modern USBs in them.
Okay, next question. Um, at what point, if will there be half-hour departures at least on the New York to Washington route? And if so, any idea when that might start?
Great question. So, if you remember, I said, and I didn't really put this into a slide, we bought 28 sets. Okay. We have three maintenance facilities for Acelas right now. Boston, New York, Washington, those three. All right. And out of those three facilities, we can only support 24 set operation. Remember, for years, we were only supporting 20. So we can only get 24 out of those. Okay. And so our plan is we have another maintenance facility. If you saw on that maintenance slide, there's a level one maintenance facility in Philadelphia being made. That will get us our extra four sets. Okay. That will get us to our 28 sets. And when we have the 28 sets running out there, you'll see all the hourly service on the south end. Plus, we call them the tweeners, right? Between, so like when I remember the Metroliners, we had a 3 o'clock, a 3:30, a 4 o'clock, a 4:30, and a 5 o'clock, all during that peak period. And we did arrangement of skip stops. Sometimes the one went to Philly and then ran local Metroliner to New York. The other one ran local to Philly, then express to New York. Saves time for everybody, provides more options. So that's the same thing we're looking at, but that won't happen. We won't have the ability to do that until that last maintenance facility comes online sometime later on in 2027. So I think 2 years from now, you're going to see a bunch more. You'll see all that hourly service restored. You'll see some tweeners out there. And remember, that's also with those 40% bigger trains, so we are actually counting on all those other trains being on the railroad there. And I just don't know offhand if everything is hourly to Boston. I think we get pretty close to hourly to Boston. Maybe not every hour, but there's a lot more stuff. Because right now, for the folks who know New York to Boston, there's some gaps in the service. That will be, eventually we are going to fill in a lot of those gaps up the north end as well. More trains and more work for everybody.
Yep. Sort of goes along with that. Will all 28 sets be in use, or will you hold a couple sets back as cover sets?
So there's always maintenance sets, right? There's always a set that's in maintenance, and eventually, when these things are out here for a couple of years, there's going to be a set going through air brake overhaul. Remember those COTNS days I talked about? So something's always going to be out for that. So in reality, when we have 28 active sets in the fleet being rotated through everything, I will probably be running about 24 starts a day. Okay. So right now I got 5 active sets. I'm running 2 starts a day, right? It'll go to 28 sets, 24 starts a day. So it means more than 24 trains because many of these trains make 2 trips or, 3 trips in some cases.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the last question from this person, would there be any, say, Washington, Philadelphia, New York express trains, or New York, New Haven, Boston express service?
So interesting question. So we have tried multiple times to put nonstops on, okay? And I remember the last time was just before COVID, I think, and what they have found every time, even back in the days of the Metroliners, right? So let's suppose you put an express train on that goes New York to Washington, right? You are now serving one market, New York to Washington market, right? Now, let's suppose, and so there's people who want to go, but sometimes I don't necessarily fill up the whole train like on just New York to Washington people, right? But now I add one stop at Philly. So maybe I have to add 5 minutes to the schedule, but now I have just tripled the size of my market on that train. So I've got a New York to Washington market, I've got a New York to Philly market, I've also got a Philly to Washington market. Now I've got 3 markets that train is serving. And what we have found is an express train just doesn't fill up the trains. Okay, it just doesn't. We don't have 386 people who want to leave right at 5 p.m. in the afternoon that want to go to Washington. But, what we are definitely looking at is how do we reduce the number of stops on the train? So, for example, 2170 today, which is the 250 train out of DC, right? It makes a stop at BWI, it makes a stop at Baltimore, but guess what? It doesn't stop at Wilmington. It goes through Wilmington now, and then it stops at Philly, and I think Newark, New York, and it goes on its way to Boston. So we don't have all the plans done yet, but we're evaluating how can we do either, fewer stops or manipulate the stops around a little bit to provide faster service. I don't know. So never say never. We may decide at some point to do some super express train. But right now, it's going to be more like some trains with limited stops and skip stop patterns to kind of maximize market share and, get more butts and seats.
Okay, great. Another question. What about the third rail operation on the dual mode sets?
There is no third rail operation. It's battery only. All right, instead of the third rail. So we can sort of the vision is for us to get out of the third rail business. Okay. For us to get out of the third rail business, we battery only. Now, if the battery doesn't work out, do we go to third rail? That's possible. If the battery doesn't work out, do we go catenary? That's possible. But right now, the plan is to go to the battery set. We are going to be testing the battery sets and seeing how they perform. We want to understand how they perform because there could be some, use for them. But, but there is no plans at this time to operate anything on the third rail.
Okay. So basically out of New York up to up the Hudson line.
So what we'll do is we'll run the battery. So where the current Empire train runs on the third rail, we'll just run on the battery. When we get through the Empire tunnel up there, right, we come around the curve at CP Empire, we'll turn on the diesel engine and we go like we do today. It'll just be battery in lieu of the third rail is what it would be.
Gotcha.
And that's actually not even, so it's sort of like Amtrak does maintain the third rail, but because Amtrak doesn't make third rail power, none of that's our power. We actually have to buy all that third rail power from Long Island Railroad because they have all that power. They supply that power from Long Island City. It comes through the substations and the tunnels. I mean, that's actually Long Island power. If you think about it, people don't really think about where power comes from, but then you have to figure out how much power does Amtrak use for the power bill? How much do we have to pay Long Island for that power? It's just a whole, it just gets us out of that.
Okay, let's see what's next here. I'm not quite sure what this question means, but maybe you will.
Try
Will
me.
the LSL, Lakeshore Limited.
Yeah. Okay.
Will it actually start on December 1st?
Yeah, that's the plan. They were running a, let's see, what's today? 20th? I think, do we run a test train? Somebody on here may know the question. I think we just ran a test train over the track, just to test it. But that's the plan to put it back on December the 1st. There was for the folks who don't know, there was a big slope. So the Post Road branch is how the station in Albany goes up the hill to a place called CP 187, where it connects up with the BNA, for the folks who know what the BNA is, all right? And as that train goes up the hill, when the New York Central built all that, or the BNA, I guess, built that, it was this big, massive fill. And a bunch of that fill gave way. It was sinking in. The track was sinking. We said, it's not safe. We had to go in. It's way up in the air, too. We had to go in and stabilize that whole thing. It's finally been done. We did all that work. And we were running, I think the tracks are all physically back, and they were running, I think they're running a test train either yesterday or today. I think there's a test train running. And then, Bill Mall, thank you, Bill. Yeah, it was yesterday. I was right. Yep. Thank you, Bill. I just saw it pop up.
Yeah, actually, I had when I first heard the announcement,
Yep.
I looked on the reservation system, and they were taking bookings.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yep. So, yep. So
Okay, moving down the line here. Um, are the door problems with the next gen a straightforward fix, or excuse me,
so
or is there more to the issue?
yeah,
Questions or
nothing.
comments? We sat in Penn Station for 90 minutes last
Uh,
week.
well, first of all, I'm very sorry about that. Okay. I'm very sorry about that. So two things. So nothing on the railroad is ever straightforward. I just trust me. I know, and nothing on the railroad is ever straightforward. Now, however, there's two things we're working on, right? One thing, a couple things we're working on. One is there have been some teething issues with the doors. We are finding some issues with the doors as either component doesn't work right, or maybe there was a quality issue with the component that really, once it really started. So we tested everything, but like if something had a quality issue, something breaks after you use it for 5,000 cycles or 10,000. So we are finding some of that out there. Okay. So that's first of all. So the Alstom is doing a pretty good job of going after it. I know we've said some stuff in the media there. The second thing is too, everything on this train is software controlled. So, we're going to hopefully shortly have a new piece of software on the train. It'll make maybe things a little bit less sensitive, a little bit easier for the crews to troubleshoot the problems, and the crews are also getting used to it too, because this is a new piece of equipment. Everybody knows how the Acela works. Everybody knows how the Ampli works. And if you've got a problem with this, we still learn how to troubleshoot the problems. We've got a whole team. Some of the folks I think are on here. Thank you again for everything you're doing, guys. And I haven't looked at my phone since here. Hopefully these trains are still moving tonight with no door issues, right? But there's a couple things going on. So the doors, except for a couple of one-off delays, which we are working very hard to eliminate. We had a big action team yesterday working on some of this stuff. So there's never going to be 100% door issues go away, but we're working to greatly, greatly, greatly reduce anything so nobody has to suffer through a 90-minute delay. And once again, I'm sorry about that, but the correct people are all engaged. So hopefully we've seen the last of them.
Next question, can you use cash on Amtrak?
Not really. Okay. So the only place I'm trying to think now, this is sort of out of my wheelhouse here. The only place I believe you might be able to use cash is out on the CCJPA or on the Capital Corridor trains, which run between San Jose, Oakland, and Sacramento, because the state partner, they wanted to use cash. We wanted to get the cash off the train. When you handle cash, it's got all sorts of problems with it, remitting the cash, accounting for the cash gets stolen, the conductor's bag gets stolen on the train. We've seen it all. Okay. We've seen a lot of things with the cash. And cash just makes it make all those problems go away. So I'm going to say I might be not 100%, but I'm pretty sure I'm 95% correct that the only place we might still have cash would be out there in California. But even I'm not sure, because when we had COVID, all cash sort of went away in COVID, and I'm not so sure it ever came back. So unless somebody knows better than me in the comments, that's my best answer I can give you.
Okay, so it won't be like Fenway Park, which is officially cashless, but most of the vendors in the stands
Do something. Okay.
more than happy to take cash.
Roy. No. So now you better. They'll be in trouble. So there, I will say, Aero and Acela. I guarantee you, there is no cash. Okay. Don't do it. Don't try it. All right. And yeah, because yeah, no cash.
Okay, next one, not a question, but a suggestion. I noticed in your photos that not every row of seats in the new trains, this was about 9:08, so we may have been on to the arrows at this
Okay.
point. Not every row of seats in the new trains has a window. Can you update the seat selector on the website and mobile app to indicate where the windows are?
Yes. We are planning on it. We don't have it yet. Somebody just asked me about that a couple weeks ago. I did some checking. I've been talking to our customer service team about that. And Acela testing team, if you guys are on here tonight, I need you to do something for me, by the way. I'll talk to you guys in the morning about it. I know you guys are listening. All right, but I do need to get a couple more things on the train checked. But right now, there's not an easy way to do that, but we do have plans to do that because the app doesn't do it yet. It's sort of another field, but we want to do it. I just don't know how soon it's going to be ready to be out there. Okay.
Okay. Just as a side note, back when the Amfleet cars were originally in service,
Yep.
they were all, I think, 88 seat or 84 seat.
84s. They're 84s. Yep.
And the seat pitch was double the window pitch, or half the window pitch. I'm sorry. So every seat had a window, basically, except that.
I'm gonna disagree with that because there's a center post. It can't be because in the center of the car, there's always
other
one in the
than
center of the car and the one at the end of the car.
no, other than the center post and the ones at the
Okay.
end,
And the
but
ones
all
at the
the
end.
others did
Agreed.
line up with the window. And
But
then cars were converted for ADA compliance, and the seat pitch changed, and there were a bunch more technically blind seats.
Yeah.
And what we ended up having to do on our Amtrak charters is go through and renumber all the seats on the train that didn't conform to the seating layout that we had used in ticketing. So
see, everybody is listening. I told you this is a quality group. They know what they're doing here. They do trips. This is a quality group, so consider supporting the group. Dave didn't pay me to say that, right?
Yeah, right. And then we had to peel the labels off at the end of the night. So next comment. German ice trains and new Eurostar trains by Siemens and the Japanese Shinkansen trains have cab cars at both ends with seats. Why did Amtrak go with power cars that have no seats?
FRA regulations. Okay, so FRA regulations. In FRA, we've got different crashworthiness requirements. And so FRA did want a thing they call it the occupied volume. They did not want an occupied volume for equipment going faster than 125 mile an hour. So this is Acela train here you see in the background. We call it tier 3 equipment. So anything that's tier 2 or tier 3, meaning above 125, the FRA didn't want it. And actually, the way it's designed, if you look at the power car, there's actually, like, let's suppose the train is involved in some type of collision. Okay, the power car, just like any other modern vehicle, is designed to have crumple zones in it to protect, think about so the locomotive engineer is going to be in this safety cage. And so the first thing is going to, so there's some anti-climbers and some other compressible draft gears in the front, and then it's going to transmit the force into the machine room of the power car, and then the machine room where the transformers and the machinery is, that's the stuff that's going to crumple up. That's the stuff that's going to all crumple up there and preserve the engineer. So they did not want any occupied volume to collapse in the event of some big accident. So that's why.
So can we assume that the Aero sets will be limited to 125 miles per hour?
That is correct. Aero sets are only 125. Aero set is called Tier 1 equipment. It's a different set of standards that applies to it.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is about getting the bottom of this column. Any news on the Horizon cars, or any being fixed, or what's the story with those?
Nothing official yet. Folks know we took 20 of them up there. It's all all I can say right now is it's under evaluation right now.
Mm-hmm. And is there a plan for where the Amfleet cars will go after the Aeros are in service?
No, Nope, there is an RFI that was put out there on the street. Some folks may have seen it in news clips about, okay, who wants to take 450 or 430, whatever the number was in there, the cars that are left. Who wants to take them? So we've got an RFI on the street for expressions of interest for folks who can take the cars.
All those heritage railroads can replace their Erie Lackawanna trailer cars.
Yeah, but you get better windows on those Erie Lackawanna trailer cars. I was just in one the other day on the Grapevine Railroad last week. I was actually in one of the Erie Lackawanna car, made it all the way to Grapevine, Texas. That's right.
Okay, now moving on. Um, let's see. Will there be more through trains between Springfield and New York City?
I'm going to say I believe so. All right. I don't know. I haven't, to be honest, I don't know what the exact plan is. I think we need more through trains there, especially when it becomes easier without the diesel and engine changes. The thing is going to be this, though. The thing is going to be this. We only have so many slots over Metro North. We only have so many slots in the Penn Station right now until we could get a bigger Penn Station built, which could happen someday. We're talking about it. So I don't know offhand. So if there are additional things, it may not happen right away. We'll have to see. Because if I have a slot, and one of the things Amtrak will do is it more valuable for me to run the Acela train in the slot? Is it more valuable for me to run the 8-car regional train in the slot or 6-car Springfield train? Or, so we will have to evaluate, that. I know there's some folks making the plans right now, but I don't have that answer at this time. That'll be in my 2026 talk, Dave.
Will the great, um, and you certainly will be welcome back.
Didn't say.
Um, so will the Springfield service eventually go over to Airo as well?
Yes. Yep. Springfield shuttles. Yep. Now, if you
Okay.
notice though too, so what's interesting is right for the folks who know what the Springfield, there's obviously CT rail trains that operate there, but there's also Springfield shuttles. Those are only 2-car trains. If you notice, we're not buying any Aero 2-car trains. So you're going to have 8-car trains up there or 6-car trains up there, which really means it's going to be some type of different service pattern. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Will the new Aero cars have better seating than the new Venture One car that this person sat in on the Blue Water last year? He comments, compared to the post-war Haywood Wakefield seats on the post-war Streamliners, or even the current seats on the Amfleet ones, these new Venture car seats are sadly inferior.
I am personally not a fan of the Midwest venture car seats. I do not like them. So that's my personal preference. Like different people, some people are saying I'm just fine with this. Some people are not. I've heard there's lots of comments from customers, going both ways on every. Believe it or not, there's actually comments like we like them. Believe it or not. All right. But I personally, like I said, having spent multiple hours on the Acela train, I've had no problem riding in those seats for 8, 9 hours on the Acela seats. I have had no issues. I've been on those Midwest cars. I've been testing those Midwest cars. And I think the Aero seats are even better than what's on the Acela, to be honest. Okay. They work long and hard. And not only that, but they actually, did some stuff with different vendors, comparing a lot of different things and made them all build some car samples and tested them out. We did a lot of consumer research with it. So I think the Aero, some people just don't like it, like if it's backwards, but there's some things that are a little bit odd, but I think all in all, though, so far, the Aero seats have been very well received, although obviously we haven't had the public riding the train yet.
Okay. Um, you made no mention of service to New Orleans or to Florida. What are the plans for those trains?
So those are long distance trains. Okay. They will be supported by another fleet. So I'm not ready to talk about it yet today. We have actually an RFP on the street right now for the long distance fleet for, starting to figure out what we're going to do about the Florida trains and the New Orleans trains and all that. So more ball to be played on that, but there's an active RFP on the street, so I really can't talk about anything there. Sorry about that, but there's just,
Okay. Would that include the Lakeshore Limited?
yes, it would. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, let's see. So will the next generation of Acelas permit half-hour frequencies? I guess
I
that's
think we covered. Yep. Not it won't be 30 minutes around the day, but I think you're going to see, remember the tweeners, right? Between, we call them the tweeners. The tweeners, during like the peak periods, whether it's morning or afternoon tweeners is probably what you're going to see during the peak periods.
Okay. So next question. So the train sets will be produced through 2032. Then is there an option to order more sets or individual cars to lengthen the sets? Um, Also, post-production, is there any way for Amtrak to 3D print replacement parts at the local repair hubs, or do they have to be made by the manufacturer and shipped to where they're needed?
All right, so let's back up a couple things here. So first of all, there are options. We have multiple options for other sets. Okay, multiple options. So for example, you haven't heard me mention Mardi Gras service. So maybe does Mardi Gras want something down there? Does the Heartland Flyer want a train down there? There's other future services we're talking about. Future high-speed rail that goes to Raleigh, where they're going to make that track, the old Norlina sub, right? To cut from Petersburg down to Raleigh, where the state of Virginia and North Carolina get together for 110-mile-an-hour operation, like could operate a bunch more services down there. So there are definitely options on the orders, like for other states and some other services that we can talk about that are out there that are potentially out there. Okay. Second thing is we actually have bought extra spare pieces of equipment. Okay. So as folks know, trains hit cars that drive around the gates, right? Trains hit cars, the trucks that stop on the track and don't call the 800 number, say, please stop the trains, right? That happens to trains, right? And typically it's the locomotive or the cab car, which is going to be the one that takes the brunt of the impact. So we actually, as part of the order, though, we've got several extra locomotives in the fleet, which we could pull the train apart and put it on. Like they sell it, it's only 11 grade crossings, which are very low risk crossings, up in Connecticut. All right. But the Aero sets go a lot of different places. So we've actually got several extra cab cars in the fleet, several extra locomotives in the fleet first, so that if we have an accident, or an incident like that, we can take it out. We can put the train. I don't lose the whole train. Okay, that we can do that. All right. You see that happen sometimes too. Like SEPTA, like SEPTA's cars are always numbered. Like I'm here in Philadelphia, like the 101 and the 102, right? They're always married together. But let's say the 102 has an accident and the 381 had an accident, but sometimes you'll see mismatched cars. They make one train out of two as they're repairing the other cars. That has happened on subways, that happens in transit, and we'll be able to do that here. Uh, can we 3D print the part? Technology changes every day, so it's possible. The other nice thing about Aero, okay, though, is because the fleet is sort of standardized a lot of things, a lot of parts are similar. So this is really the fourth generation now of these cars that are out here. Okay, the fourth generation. If you think about it, they first came out as the venture cars, right? So the venture cars not only operate in the Midwest, there's about 88 of them in the Midwest. There's another 60 or whatever it is out in California for the San Joaquin. What do they call that now? Gold Runner, Gold Flyer, the Gold Digger, whatever, the Gold Service out there. Sorry,
Gold Rush.
Gold. I don't know, whatever that
I think
is.
it's Gold Rush.
San Joaquin. All right, everybody. We'll just keep it in here. Don't tell California I call it the San Joaquin service, but the San Joaquins, right? So they're out there. So those cars came out first, right? Second of all, Brightline came out. Brightline runs a whole bunch of the same cars too, right? They run a whole bunch of the same stuff. So once again, they need parts. They're going to need all sorts of stuff. Third of all, Via came out with those cars, right? Via runs them. Now, fourth, we've got Amtrak Aero. So we've actually got four different agencies running a ton of these cars. I mean, we're buying hundreds of these cars. Brightline, like there's at least another 130 or 140, I would say, between California and the Midwest. I forget how many V is getting. They're getting like something like 30 train sets, I think, offhand. I can't remember. And Brightline's got, and they're buying more cars now. So, the beauty of the Brightline is even so, yeah, can I 3D print apart? Yep, I'm sure I could in certain circumstances, but we've got a much larger base to spread this across for the car type and for the parts you need. A lot of the things are similar. We've got different seats, obviously, right? We don't have those venture seats, but we have an economy of scale here, so there's going to be supportable to the industry. There's going to be more manufacturers staying in business for longer times as we chew through parts, as parts wear out, or when we need to upgrade things, in the future when things wear out in 10 years from now.
Okay. Next one, the map of servicing facilities did not include the route Rutland to Burlington. Serving facility in that area is shown as Essex Junction, not St. Albans. Where will it or they be located?
There's really no
Vermont
place.
services.
They're still working on what's going to happen in Burlington, okay? Because Burlington, if the folks know about Burlington, you're sort of in the middle of that train yard, so I'm not exactly what shore it is, and we're still working with the state of Vermont right now Like I know it shows Essex, so don't take everything as 100% that was on that map there, because I know
Okay.
there's still some unknown things. Like Vermont still's got designs. How can we extend the Vermonter to Montreal? That's always been on again, off again. There's still a lot of figuring out what we're going to do up there. So I don't think that investment's being made just yet. So all right,
Mr. Fowler is on. So,
okay,
um, couple questions
yeah.
about your background shot there. Um,
So it's not my
think
shot.
Doug. Yep.
Doug Kidd, I saw Doug Kidd popped up. So I forget who took it. That was given to me by somebody in New England. I forget who this. If you're on, the photographer's on. I haven't met him yet. Between I forget who he sent it to me. So thank you very much for that. He also did a beautiful shot of some M8 equipment there, which we used. I think we got his permission for it. We used on the cover actually of our M8 safety plan. We had a file with the FRA when we started running M8s on shoreline e-service. So it's up here. It's on the shore of Connecticut, or up around Stony Creek. So
Okay, moving down the list here. Things still keep coming in. What's the story on tilting? Do the new Acela train sets tilt? What about the previous problems with track and clearances that prevented the first gen Acela from running at top speed?
So a couple things. Yes, they do tilt. Okay. And they can go to the full tilt uh without any clearance issues. So the old train tilted, right? But like if you tilted too far, the old train was more sort of like a horizon car, believe it or not. So it was close. It was closer. So if it tilted too much, you could have the potential to foul another track. So they were limited to 4.5 degrees of tilt. This Acela does not have that problem. They do actively tilt. We're still finalizing some paperwork. So they're tilting now, but they're not quite going as fast. If you remember that talk I gave, there's 5-inch underbalance speeds, 7-inch underbalance speeds. So they're cleared right now for the FRA at 5-inch underbalance speeds. We are working with the FRA to get them moved to 7 inches. So they will be able to go faster eventually, but we needed to get them into service now. Okay, so we're actively working on it. I don't have a time frame exactly when I'll speed them up a little more. The top speed is 160 though. Old train was 150. That is 160. So they definitely go 160 like I talked about. But there's still some of the curves we slow them down for until we finish some paperwork with the FRA.
Okay, I was just scrolling down a little bit. So down in the bottom right-hand corner of your background shot,
Yep.
it says Fred Gunther.
Oh, that's the name. Okay. Yep. Well,
So
thank
there
you,
you go.
Fred. If he's on, I
Yep,
don't know if he's on because it's not mine, and I want to make sure I never take a credit off. I never claim credit, but it was given to me, and I said I had permission to use
he's
it. Yeah.
he's not on yours. I can
Okay.
tell. Let's see. Get close to the end here.
Okay.
Um, are the faucets in the labs touchless? If
Yes.
so, can they be repaired en route when they ultimately fail?
It depends on what the nature of the failure is. Okay. So in some cases, so they are touchless. Okay. Soap dispensers touchless. A lot of the bathrooms are mostly touchless. Okay. But if something, it really depends on what the nature of the failure is. If something really gives up the ghost, it's not going to come back, right? In some cases, though, because they're touchless and they're digitally controlled with sensors and stuff like that, sometimes there's a system you can reboot it, just like your computer. When something stops working, you stop, you reboot the computer, and magically it was like nothing was ever wrong. The same thing can happen with some of the electronics on the train. So it really it depends. There's no straight answer one way or the other.
Okay, let's see. I think we're now down to yes, that's the rest was all thank yous. So I've got a couple of questions.
All right.
I noticed that in the Aero cars, the tables have a pull-out extension,
Yep.
which is pretty much the same as on the Brightline Venture sets.
Mm.
And the Acelas have a flip over thing, which means that if you need to bend down and pick something up, you got to flip the thing over. You got to move the
Yep.
stuff that's on the table.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, they are different. Now, I will say one thing about the Acelas, though, about those Acelas, but actually both the tables. If you notice, though, like on the old train, even on the Amfleet tables, right, with the business class and on the Acela tables, it's the whole thing that flips. So if you need to get up and flip, your seatmates also got to do the stuff. If you notice, though, they're sectionalized on purpose. So although, yeah, you got to flip it up or down. Usually I say, do I want it up or down before you sit down? But you can do it without bothering your seatmate or have to have the second person also pick up their stuff to flip it up or flip it down, because that's just very
Well,
awkward.
that's not really true because if you're in the window seat, you need to get up and get out.
It depends. Okay, it depends. Everybody is not, yeah, I can snake around it usually, but yeah,
Yeah,
not not everybody can.
yeah. But my point is, yeah, you can't. Um, let's see. So I gather from what you said earlier that the Aero coaches are basically sort of a bit of an advanced generation from what the Venture sets on Brightline.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
they're
so I mean the
awesome.
trucks are the same, the wheels are the same. It's got a more advanced air brake system in there. Doors are different, like, and folks know we've had some problems with those doors in the Midwest where things were exposed, and when things get frozen, especially in the Midwest, or especially when you're going 110 mile an hour across, through Dowagiac, Michigan. For folks who've been out there in the snow, those trains make a lot of snow out there at 110 in Michigan, right? Lake effect snow, and the steps get frozen. So, we've got different designs we put in there. There are some differences, in that stuff as well to keep them from, having the same issues that we have out there.
One of the things I loved when I rode Brightline was that the restrooms were basically um, when you press the button to close the door, it automatically locked.
Yep. So I haven't been on the train yet with those working, but we basically have the same restrooms that Brightline does.
How about on the next gens?
That's it. It's a whole different animal.
Okay.
There's a button that'll say, it'll remind you, please lock the door. Then you press it, say, door is locked. It'll tell you when the door is locked. But yeah, so but the Aero stuff is very, very similar to all the rest of the standard Siemens restroom you see out there.
Let's see. Any chance of sleeping cars on the night train from Boston to Washington?
So here's the thing. So believe it or not, everybody, you're gonna throw darts at me now. I'm one of the guys that took it off years ago. Okay. So if I had unlimited sleeping cars, right? If I had unlimited sleeping cars, then we have sleeping cars on all the trains, right? But with the limited view liners we had at the time, uh, you know, it's better. I can make more money putting an extra car on the Silver Meteor than I can running it on, I'm going to say the Night Owls. I know it's reasonable, but the Night Owl, you guys know what I mean. Okay. And anyway, so it made more money elsewhere, so we took it off. And right now, we really don't have some stuff in the middle. We have so many projects going on. We sort of got the corridor almost shuts down now between for a couple hours every night now. We don't really have the trains running overnight like we did. I mean, there's a couple trains that pull in like 151, excuse me, 66 pulls into Philadelphia and it sits there for like 4 hours or 3 hours before it starts going again. You know, I don't know. I don't see it in the cards. It's a lot of money when I could sell more tickets in coach space. It's all about the financials, I think.
Yep.
I don't see it in the cards, to be honest.
Um, let's see. I
And
think
and
we're
and
gonna
by
have to come. We're gonna have to bring this to a close here
okay,
sometime.
okay.
Um, one comment is first gen Acela has 10 lavatories for 304 passengers. The next gen has, he thinks, 9 for 380 passengers.
Mhm.
Um, he says on his few rides on the next gen, there have been long lines for the lavs. Has this been noticed by management?
Yeah, so we've had one of the things I could say though is in a couple cases we're still getting the reliability up there. So we've had a couple restrooms go out of service, which causes some long lines. It causes the backup in another car. So we've got some attention around it. We were just doing some calls yesterday about it. What are we going to do to make sure we can get everything working 100%? So we should be okay in the long run. I'm going to chalk some of that up to some teething pains right now. Now, at any time though, just even like when you're on an airplane, sometimes at certain times, like right before you go to New York, there's gonna be a rush, like, oh, I just want to use the restroom on the train before I get off in New York. So it's tough to support any of that. Uh, we don't have enough lavatories to support everybody getting up at the same time. It's like Super Bowl commercial, right? Everybody runs to the restroom at the same time. So we won't be able to fix every problem, but I think some of the things, I think it's going to be, you'll see it getting better over time here.
Okay, with that, I think it's a good time to bring the presentation to a close. So, Chris, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to present to us tonight. And with that, we'll close the formal part of the meeting.